Hey everybody, welcome again to another episode of Ruby and Rails Refactoring. Um, this is an example that I pulled from a code base that I had worked on in the past, and it just kind of shows some mistakes or things that you really just don't want to do. And it shows a bit of a better way to do things. And again, there's always different and better ways to do things. So if you guys come up with something that you think is better, submit it to me in a gist. Just put it in the comments. A gist is a GitHub way of posting up code if you're familiar with it. And I'll have a look at it, and yeah, I'll do a video on that if that's better. So I'm always looking for better ways to do things. But this is a pretty solid way. It makes it pretty easy to maintain, as you'll see. Before I go on, I have to mention, of course, that I have this book on Kindle, on Amazon, actually, called The Rapid Rubyist. And so if you're looking to learn the basics of Ruby, it's a pretty good book for that. It's just a little bit of text and then an example for you to work through. And it's pretty basic. You get to, the nice thing I think about learning this way is that you have a good chance to experiment and try different things out. So I'll probably in a future video actually show you what the pages look like, but I just haven't had time. Been busy recently. So with that being said, let's get started. So let me explain a little bit about how this works, and then we'll get into refactoring it. So the first thing we have down here is this hash, right? So this hash has the tax rate and amount. Those are just two numbers. And we're going to create our example class here, which is up here. And then we just call this convert for web service method right here. And then we're going to output what the results are. And we'll do an inspect so we can see. So let's talk about what this method was supposed to do and why it works the way it does. So it was basically a situation where the person had to reformat the code for a web service. And by reformat, I mean it's coming in a certain way. So the hash, it'll say tax rate. This is what they're getting, right? They're getting a tax rate, an amount, or months. And basically they needed to translate it because the web service didn't take tax rate or amount. It took nominal tax rate and total amount. Those type of things. So they had to return this extra hash in a specific way. Plus, the way this thing worked is that it solved for a specific value. So here we have tax rate and amount. As you can see, months is also one of the keys. It's not in the hash, but we'll get to that. And so basically they had to solve, like if you gave it two of the three criteria, it would return the third. And so you had to at least tell it, hey, I need this other one. I need this other value. So that's what this missing keys is. So now I'll actually get into the method. So what does this do? So it takes a hash, that's our hash right here, and then it first defines missing keys. And you'll see a little bit about how this works, but these are the three keys that could possibly be missing, one of which only could be missing. Then there's hash to return, that's what we're going to actually send to the web service. It's going to be formatted differently. So what does this do? I mean, it takes our hash that we have. It says, hey, do I have a tax rate? If I do have a tax rate, then create this add a key nominal tax rate for hash to return. That's what we're going to return. And say hash equals tax rate. So get the tax rate, stick it in a new hash, which has the proper key that we can send to the web service. Then, on the next line, you see missing keys, delete tax rate. So it goes through and it says, get this, and now I know that I have the tax rate, so I'm not going to have to solve for that. Delete this from this array. So the same thing here. Same thing with amount. It says, okay, I need to format this as total amount. Let's grab the current amount and then say delete on the amount. And then when you get down to the bottom, it goes for missing keys, 0, which it could be first as well. You could use the first method. What that does is, if you think about it, if you're getting 2 of these 3, you're only going to have 1, so that's what you need to solve for, right? And you'll see this in a second. Then we have hash to return, which is actually going to return to the end user, or excuse me, to the service. So let's see how this works. We're going to run rubybefore.rb. And as you see, you get months back. That's from as you can see, we have tax rate and amount, but we don't have months. So, and that's missing keys right here. So we're saying, hey, this is what we actually need to solve for. And then here are the values in a hash the way they need to be formatted. So nominal tax rate is 22, and total amount is this amount. So it's formatted the way, the way it needs to be for the web service, and this is literally what the web service takes. It just takes a JSON version of this, basically. So how can we make this better? Why is this bad? Well, this is bad for a couple of reasons. It's a little confusing, for one. Secondly, you have a lot of code duplication here, right? You're assigning hash to return, and you've got tax rate, things you're deleting. Basically, you're doing the same thing over and over. This is probably better to be iterated over than to just have if statements everywhere. Why? It's easier to maintain, and it'll be less of a headache, hopefully. And especially, I think you'll realize the longer you're in your career with Rails and Ruby, there's kind of a certain way people do things. And it'll kind of, I think, hopefully fit more in that pattern. So let's get started. We're going to go to this after file. And I should also mention that if you go to GitHub, I'll try to put a link in the video, but this code will all be up there. So the first thing we're going to do is create sort of a matching hash or a translation hash. So I'll come up here. I've already written this out. So what does it do? It's got our tax rate, amount, and month, and it just maps to what the actual value needs to be. So obviously tax rate needs to be nominal tax rate, amount is total amount, months is months. Okay, so what do we do from there? The first thing is that we don't need our missing keys anymore, right? We're not going to use that method. We do need our hash that we're going to return, but let's come over here and start on this, right? So we'll take our match hash and iterate through it. So we'll say each pair, which is a method that just gives you each key and value, like this. So do, and then end. So basically we're going to loop through each match pair and say, what do we have, right? So we'll say if hash key is present or is there, what does that do? So we're saying, all right, we're going to take each key here, so match hash goes through each one of these, and we'll get the key, in this case tax rate, and then we'll look it up in hash, which is what we're getting, which is the same thing as we were getting in the previous file. So it's the same thing, we're just saying, okay, look up tax rate in this hash. If we have it, what are we going to do then? Well, what we'll do is build up that hash to return, and we'll say its value, or the key I should say, is going to be this number, right? So we want to say, the first time through we're going to have tax rate. We want it to say nominal tax rate, which is the value on this match hash. So we'll say value equals hash key. So again, we're going to now assign 22 to nominal tax rate. So that's our new hash. Then we're going to go to our match hash and delete the key. So we know our key is going to be tax rate for match hash and for a hash, which is what we're passing in. So we're just going to delete that key. So that allows us to eliminate all of this. And now you might say at this point, well, I don't see a huge benefit here because what are you really saving? Well, if you think about it, if you ever need to add another field, what are you going to have to do now? I mean, to add another field, you just add, whatever, and translated name or whatever it's going to be called. And everything is going to function the same, and you won't need any of this anymore. You won't, and so the alternative would be, of course, that you're going to have to create another if statement. So this is definitely, I think, a better way to do things. Then, when you're done with that, the only thing you need to do is grab your match hash, because hash to return is going to stay the same, and you'll say match hash. And now we've deleted the first two keys, and let's get rid of whatever again, because we're not going to use that. So we're going to get rid of we've already gotten rid of two of the three keys, and we'll just say we'll grab the first element, and then that will, when you call first on a hash, it's going to return an array of the key and value. And in our case, all we want is the value, so it's going to be like yearly months in this case. So we'll just say last, so it'll be the second one. So I'll show you how this works. Let's go in here, Ruby, and this is after.rb. As you can see, what do we get first? We get yearly months, which we want. Then we get nominal tax rate is 22, total amount 323. And we have it in a package that's much easier to iterate through and to deal with. Now, in general, this is something where you may have use for it in multiple places in your app, so you could always build this into some sort of a method. Or some people may try to make it a constant. I don't do that here, obviously, because I only have one use case, right? So like the popular phrase, "you ain't gonna need it," is definitely comes to mind, because you're probably not gonna need it in more than one place. But even if you did, you can easily break it out into its own thing. In our case, though, I need to be able to mutate it or delete things from it, so I'm gonna leave it in this method. So that's this refactoring. It's the second one. I definitely have a lot more to come. I'm going to try to do about one a day. I don't know if I'll have that much time, but I come across so many projects that are hard to maintain, or elements in them that are hard to maintain. And I wouldn't say this is beautiful. This can still be refactored more, but it will definitely save you as far as maintenance goes, because doing things like this are very hard to maintain. And to be honest with you, it might seem crazy, but I've definitely seen projects where you have many like things like this, except this is on a very small scale, right? So the problem is not as obvious here, but you get to people doing things like this, which I have to say I've seen too often. And then you really start to see the value. I mean, something like this is absolutely insane to maintain if you had different keys for each. Whereas something like this would be pretty easy, right? You just go in and change or add a value, or a new entry in the hash, and that's it. All right, guys, that's it. Again, if you have a chance, check out my book. I hope you guys who have purchased it do enjoy it. All right, take care. Bye.